Joining us now for more is pediatric intensive care Dr. Tanya Haj Hassan of Doctors Without Borders, who is in London right now. Dr. Haj Hassan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
As a critical care doctor who has worked for years in the field of humanitarian aid, what are you hearing from your colleagues on the ground in Gaza and specifically at al-Shifa Hospital?
I mean, it's a catastrophe. Words escape me. I had a very short night last night, and in the 4 or 5 hours that I was in bed, I woke up at the end of it to a message to hear that al-Shifa Hospital had been struck 3 times. It had been targeted 3 times with airstrikes. They told me that the front entrance of the hospital was hit, the emergency department entrance was hit, the back was hit, and the labor and delivery ward was hit. I then received a flood of videos of the massacre of civilians who were sheltering in the hospital, in the compound of the hospital. There were 13 people that were killed instantly. A young girl screaming for her father, a man lying on the ground with a leg that had been amputated by the strike. He was hemorrhaging and screaming for help on the ground. Another man with a very severe head injury, and a few dead children. That was the footage inside the hospital compound from the airstrike. My colleagues were obviously very distraught. The director of surgery at this hospital subsequently sent us a message saying, "Dear colleagues, the situation in Shifa now is extremely dangerous. We as medical staff want to leave, but we cannot. We might not survive till the morning. We don't want to be killed here, just only because we remained committed to our patients and our medical profession. I am calling for help urgently. Please do whatever you can through your government or through the International Red Cross to arrange a safe corridor for the medical staff. Please treat this as top urgent." I have been able to reach one of my colleagues who fled to the south. She is safe. She is distraught. She is in tears. The rest of the staff who I know who work there, I have not been able to reach them since last night. I don't know what they're going through at the moment. I can only imagine how horrific it is. If anything is more horrifying than what we've been seeing in the last month. Every day we reach a new low in human 100% man-made catastrophe.
Breaking news, the Israeli military has circled around al-Shifa Hospital and continues to bomb surrounding areas and to the Palestinians who are outside the hospital because they were told to evacuate, leaving them trapped, where the Israeli military are using snipers and precision bombs on defenseless Palestinians. Due to the claim that the Israeli military is saying that there is Hamas tunnels underneath the hospital. So let's talk about the breaking news here. Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, day 35. Tanks besiege Gaza City hospitals as Israel ramps up attacks on medical centers. 11,078 are killed, including 4,506 children, 27,490 wounded in Gaza. The Gaza Ministry of Health said that Israeli army tanks were surrounding the Al-Rantisi and Al-Nasir hospitals in Gaza City on Friday, as medical centers across the besieged Gaza Strip were subjected to an escalation of Israeli bombardment in the past 24 hours. Thousands of patients, medical staff, and displaced people are trapped inside hospitals without water and food and are at risk of death at any moment. The world should be ashamed of itself for not doing anything in the face of massacres and targeting and besieging hospitals, ministry spokesman Ashraf al-Khadija wrote. Al Jazeera, meanwhile, reported that Israeli forces have carried out strikes throughout the night very close to al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, and that gunshots could be heard getting nearer and nearer on Friday morning. Israel has claimed al-Shifa Hospital sits above Hamas' main command center in Gaza. But the biggest hospital in Gaza is currently a refuge for thousands of civilians seeking shelter and medical treatment amid the absolute devastation caused by thousands of Israeli bombs raining over Gaza since October 7th. In the past 24 hours alone, Israeli strikes have repeatedly hit Rantisi Hospital, al-Nasir Hospital, al-Shifa Hospital, and the Indonesian hospital in Beit Lahia, and the Al-Aqsa Clinic in Yan Kunis in supposedly safe southern Gaza, in the vicinity of the Al-Walda Hospital in Tal al-Zatir and the Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City. Now, you may say, well, why are they bombing and striking hospitals? Because that is where a large concentration of Palestinians are. They're displaced from the south, they're displaced from the north, West Bank and Gaza. So the safe areas where they can basically shelter and where they feel protected are hospitals, because hospitals are protected under international law. Now, there is a loophole. If it seemed that there is hostilities provided by the enemy to hospitals, that protection is lifted. However, even though Israel is claiming that al-Shifa hospitals underneath the hospital is the Hamas command center, they provided no evidence whatsoever. No diagrams, no eyewitness evidence, no nothing. And in fact, an update video I did earlier today talking about it, we're going to go visit right back and show you that the the members of the al-Shifa hospital directors basically allowed the media to check underneath the hospital to show that it's not a Hamas tunnel, but a water tower underneath the hospital. Israeli forces close in on al-Shifa hospital, trapping thousands. Israeli military is closed in on the front gates of Gaza's biggest hospital, where thousands of injured and displaced people are trapped amid intensive Israeli bombardment. Israeli forces had fully encircled the al-Shifa hospital as of early on Saturday morning, preventing ambulances from entering or leaving the facility where medical supplies and food are running low. Now, there was a video which I can't show because it'll be it'll basically be age restricted, and maybe even I get a strike for promoting gore and violence. But if you go on Twitter and put in al-Shifa bombing, you'll see that there's one video showing a kid's leg being destroyed by a precision missile by an Israeli plane up above. You can hear the strike on the ground, and then the camera runs. Somebody's holding the camera, and you can see one guy diving. He's bleeding out his back, and the one young man with his legs destroyed and a noticeable protruding wound where his intestines are coming outside of his back. And, you know, it's easy to strike defenseless people and claim they're Hamas. It's easy to strike defenseless people and claim they're a threat. I don't know how a defenseless young man can be a threat to an Israeli warplane. Well, I know why. It's because you can't do it against people who can defend themselves. So you do it to defenseless people, because this is about the liquidation of Palestinians out of West Bank and Gaza, either by forced displacement or by killing them. I mean, the war cabinet under Benjamin Netanyahu is basically even publicly stated, even before the conflict that started on October 7th, what they thought about Palestinians. They are attacking and destroying the front gates of the main medical complex in the Gaza Strip as patients and thousands of Palestinians are still residing inside the yard of this hospital, Al Jazeera's Tariq Abu Azoum said. Those people are really trapped right now by Israeli forces who are stationed in different sectors encircling the entire place. They are no longer able to move ambulances to bring victims and wounded people from the areas targeted. People are trapped and they lack food. Abu Azoum said that Israeli snipers and artillery were also targeting anyone moving outside the hospital. So this way, anybody coming and going from the hospital are shot or killed or maimed, and anybody trapped in the hospital are shot, killed, or maimed. This is genocide. This is crime against humanity. This is a war crime and a crime of aggression. These are the 4 laws of the International Criminal Courts. Israel is guilty without debate. The Israeli government, the Israeli military, guilty. Al-Shifa director Mohammed Abu Salima described the area around the hospital as a battlefield, but said the hospital staff had pledged to stay with the patients until the last moment. What else do they have? What could they do? They can't get out. We will not leave because we know if we leave the hospital, dozens of patients will die, Abu Salima told Al Jazeera. The escalating bombardment comes after an Israeli strike on the al-Shifa hospital early on Friday, killed at least 13 people and wounded several others. That's the bombing I was talking about, according to the health ministry and the Hamas-governed enclave. Now, let's go back to talk about the international laws provided for hospitals in war-torn conflicts. And I'm reading from the International Committee of the Red Cross. I'm not reading from any media articles. I'm going straight to the source. You can't argue. It was a non-debatable conversation. Protection of hospitals during non-conflicts, what the law says. According to international humanitarian law, health establishments and units, including hospitals, should not be attacked. This protection extends to the wounded and sick as well as to the medical staff and means of transport. The rule has few exceptions. What kind of specific protection do the wounded and sick enjoy in times of armed conflict? In times of armed conflict, the wounded and sick include anyone, whether military or civilian, who needs medical attention and is not or no longer taking part in hostilities. That's a key phrase here. Under international humanitarian law, all wounded and sick, no matter what party they belong to, enjoy general rights to be respected, not to be subject to attacks, killing, or ill treatment. Now, we're not talking about the international criminal courts here. We're talking about international humanitarian law. International law. So that means Israel, even though they're not co-signers of the international criminal courts, have to abide by international law. But they don't care. Because the law doesn't apply to them, they feel. They've already said it. You know, they talked about the International Red Cross. They talked about Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. They don't care. And United Nations. We don't care what they have to say. Because we're not going to be held accountable. Protected, a right to be assisted and shielded from harm against third parties. Searched for and collected. Cared for without distinction based on grounds other than medical ones. Though international humanitarian law allows to search for, collect, and provide care as far as practicable, in other words, taking into consideration the security conditions and the means available, a lack of resources does not justify inaction. Even in cases where such resources are limited, state and non-state parties to a conflict must accomplish their best efforts to ensure medical care to the wounded and sick. The protection provided to the wounded and sick may have little meaning if medical personnel, medical units and establishments, and medical means of transport were subject to attack. Next question. In what circumstances can medical establishments and units lose their protection granted by international humanitarian law? Specific protection of medical establishments and units, including hospitals, is the general rule under international humanitarian law. Therefore, specific protection to which hospitals are entitled shall not cease unless they're used by a party to the conflict to commit outside their humanitarian functions and act harmful to the enemy. Now, Israel's claim here is that under al-Shifa Hospital is a Hamas tunnel. It's the main command center, they're saying. Remember, there's no evidence for this other than what they're saying. And this is coming from the Prime Minister's, Netanyahu's Prime Minister's Public Relations Committee. And also the Military Committee. Wow. Talk about one-sidedness. In case of doubt as to whether medical units of establishments are used to commit and act harmful to the enemy, they should be presumed not to be so used. Now, what did al-Shifa say? When we're talking about the medical staff at al-Shifa say, well, again, like I used this article before, investigation disproves Israeli claim of Hamas tunnel under Gaza hospital. the al-Shifa hospital. The hatch Israel claimed was a Hamas tunnel is only a water reservoir for the hospital. Remember this picture that they used? Oh, this is the command center for Hamas. This is what they used as evidence. This is similar to when Colin Powell, the Secretary of State under the Bush administration, went before with cartoon pictures of tunnels in Iraq, cartoon pictures of chemical facilities that they said that al-Qaeda and the Iraqi Ba'athist Army were making and procuring chemical and biological weapons. What did the United Nations Security Council say? Well, that's enough evidence. And what happened? 1.2 million Iraqis were killed on the basis of a lie. Al Jazeera's Divisional Investigation Agency has disproved the latest claim by Israeli authorities that there was a tunnel for Hamas fighters underneath the Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Hospital for Rehabilitation and Prosthetic Hospital, known as the Qatari Hospital. Now, this is November 8th of 2023. Israeli authorities have also claimed that there are command bunkers and main tunnels running under Gaza hospitals as a justification for targeting health facilities which are protected in war by international law. Now, I said the al-Shifa hospital. I'm sorry. This was the Gaza Sheikh Hamad Hospital, right? A video released by Israeli military showed a hatch in the hospital courtyard right next to an exterior wall that they allege leads to a Hamas tunnel. However, Sanad's investigation showed that this is simply the access hatch for a water reservoir that the hospital uses to fill therapeutic pools for amputees, water the grounds, and a reserve water source in case of an emergency. Like other hospitals in the besieged Gaza Strip, it has been damaged by Israelis' relentless aerial bombardment that targets medical facilities. I mean, what can we basically say? I wouldn't, I basically would just say at this point that there is no evidence to suggest that there is any evidence for this ridiculous notion that there's a command center under al-Shifa. Now, what I'm going to show you next is from the profile of I think, and let me check, is from the Israeli military's own Twitter profile. IDF spokesman Daniel Hagar. Okay. Now, look at what I'm going to show you. Now, I'm going to show you something. This is ridiculous. This is what they're considering it as evidence for this command center under al-Shifa Hospital. Right now, this is similar to what Colin Powell showed at the United Nations Security Council in 2003. Right. This is translated from Hebrew, right? This is his profile. As part of a special briefing for the international media, the IDF spokesman revealed a great deal of information proving that Hamas routinely and in emergency uses humanitarian structure in the Gaza Strip for the benefit of its terrorist activities while utilizing the humanitarian shelter to protect its terrorists and the leaders of the terrorist organization, right? Here's a video. This is what they showed, right? Here's the hospital, al-Shifa. This is it. It's a cartoon. This is their evidence. Look at this. Imagine. Now, if they were underneath this tunnel, let's say that there's eyewitnesses and whatnot. Why are they showing a cartoon video? Why aren't there actual photos? Here. This is it. I mean, if this is their evidence, this wouldn't pass in a court of law. Maybe their courts. I mean, just think about the horror of this. Is that the only evidence that they have is their word and a video cartoon character of this elaborate Hamas designed underneath the hospital. And they couldn't tell you where they got the information from. There's no actual photos. There's no actual eyewitnesses. So this is their evidence to show that the hospitals in Gaza, at least al-Shifa, is not afforded international humanitarian law protection. And if they actually went to, say, if the Palestinians, who are non-state actors protected under the international criminal courts, if they actually provided, the demonstrable evidence of them bombing this hospital, and there's thousands of people killed, Israel can be prosecuted for what they're doing here. Now, this is a wait and see approach to see what happens in the next 24 hours. But right now, this is ridiculous. And I'm horrified that this is what they consider evidence. But it's not like the first time we're seeing ridiculous evidence used to conduct war crimes. Like I said, with the United States, it was with Iraq. With Israel, it's Gaza. And now the West Bank. So, we need more openness regarding the public. We need to really condemn the Israeli government for what they're doing here. This is disastrous. There's no defense. This is a one-way slaughterhouse. Now, you want to say I'm too harsh on the Israeli government and its military? Well, too bad. This is, it's not like they're getting any resistance. They're slaughtering these people. Open slaughter. You can't justify and say it's Hamas all the time, because that's going to wear out. And then what are you going to be left with? And shame on the United States for being silent, for advocating this. The government doesn't represent me. I know it doesn't represent you. You show your displeasure by not voting for anybody. Vote for a third party or a libertarian candidate. Don't vote Democrat, Republican. They're sellouts. Last night they shut down Grand Central because thousands of New York Jews went to Grand Central to shut down the whole terminal, protesting the war. There's a lot of people speaking out, a lot of people protesting, and we need more voices to bring attention to this atrocity. All right, that's the latest update regarding this. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next video. Take care, everybody.